Changes could be coming to the state health plan. The House approves tougher protection of unborn children, and the state crime lab faces new rules and accountability. We'll explain next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hello again, I'm Kelly McCullen. We begin this week's show in the state Senate, where it has approved an overhaul of the state health plan. That plan is North Carolina's largest payer of health insurance premiums, and it covers state employees past and present. There was no debate on the financial struggles of the state health plan, but some real disagreement over who should pay premiums in the future and promises made in the past to state workers. A near party-line Senate vote gave tentative approval to legislation changing the way the state health plan is funded and who oversees the insurance plan's operations. Senate Rules Committee Chairman Tom Apodaca says state employees would begin paying a premium for state health plan coverage, but that the state will contribute more money than workers are being asked to contribute.
We're putting in close to $500 a month per employee out of state money. When you work the math out, it's about 5%, I believe.
The proposal would see current state employees pay $11 per month for a basic tier of health insurance coverage, or near $22 per month for a standard health insurance tier. State retirees would pay nothing for the basic health insurance tier, but would pay premiums for the standard tier. Senate Democrats question making retirees pay anything at all for health care.
If, in fact, it's an earned benefit, I question whether you can now begin to charge them for it.
I believe that we make a promise to people who retire, and we tell them beforehand, if you do what you're supposed to, toe the line, show up every day, clock in, clock out, do everything you're supposed to, then at the end of this, we're going to take care of you.
The state health plan bill removes the legislature as the direct overseer of the state health plan. A new board chaired by the state treasurer would manage the operation. The House, Senate, Treasurer, and Governor's office would each appoint 2 board members.
Out of the 4 groups appointing members to this board, 1 from each group must be either an active employee or a retiree.
The state health plan eliminates wellness programs. Brand name drugs would rise in price, but generic prescriptions would remain $10 per prescription. Dependents could stay on family policies until 26 years old to match federal health care law. Senate Democrats have forced a third procedural vote for Monday night when they say they'll be offering amendments to this legislation. Josh Ellis with the North Carolina News Network here to talk about the state health plan bill. Josh, how does the Senate Republican bill that passed compare with proposals put forth by Governor Perdue?
Somewhat similar. It does make some changes that pass some costs on the state employees and retirees, but does it in a little bit different way. The particularly main difference is the Republicans have tried to keep things like the copays down, but they've raised higher premiums on. There's also higher out-of-pocket expenses in the Republican Senate plan, and there's also does touch the retirees, something that they think is a necessary evil, essentially.
Let's start with current state workers, those who are not retired. What's the sentiment for making them pay some sort of premium, as you've heard Democrats and Republicans discuss this bill and the overall proposal?
I mean, the bottom line is the plan needs money. I mean, in addition to the $1.6 billion that they're spending each year, they need an additional $515 million to keep it running for the next 2 years. And the state is picking up a little bit, but those premiums and those out-of-pocket expenses are certainly going to go a long way. I think it's, do the math, around 75% of that is going to be passed on to the state employees.
The House of Representatives takes up this bill next. We've heard the line being drawn with retirees, at least from the Senate Democrats. How much of the future debate will revolve around whether or not retirees ought to pay something for their health care?
I mean, that's certainly going to be the debate. And I should also point out that, under this plan, the lower end plan, the 70-30 plan, is free, but the 80-20 is the one that retirees would have to pay. And there will be debate on, can we change that? But, you know, the question is ultimately, if you change those numbers, you're changing costs, and someone's going to have to pick up the tab. Ultimately, it doesn't look like there's a lot of willingness for the state to be picking up much additional money. So we'll have to see how it works out.
I have to tell you, of course, I'm a UNC-TV employee. All you employees of the network are under the state health plan, or a lot of us are. So there's a disclaimer in case someone questions my questioning here. Now, will the premiums being paid by employees under this proposal be enough to fill the financial hole the state health plan seems to suffer every year?
I mean, it goes a long way. It's certainly a big chunk of it, but you know, it's those out-of-pocket expenses also help close that gap. There is some taxpayer money that would be used, but it certainly does not entirely close it.
Josh Ellis, North Carolina Now News Network. You'll hear him on the radio. Thanks for being on the show.
Glad to be here.
The Senate unanimously passed a House bill reforming North Carolina's state crime lab. The 50-0 vote clears the way for several new procedures and legal responsibilities that crime lab experts must follow. Studies will be conducted on lessening and eliminating human errors when handling criminal evidence. State forensic science experts must be certified to international standards, and an ombudsman will oversee the lab's operation. Crime lab officials would be criminally liable for willfully withholding evidence from defense attorneys. All these suggestions come from a bipartisan commission that reviewed the handling of biological evidence.
This study committee was a bipartisan committee led by legislators from both chambers, included representation from the defense bar, prosecutors, and law enforcement. The committee met a number of times over 4 months. Presentation was made by scientists and experts in the field about best practices and lab accreditation.
Most provisions of this crime lab reform bill will take effect this July 1st. The House passed legislation this week to allow the hearing impaired to serve on juries. That same bill tried to lower the age at which a person may request in writing to avoid jury duty while avoiding appearing in court. The bill would have allowed people to request jury exemptions at age 66 instead of age 72, but the House preserved the 72-year age limit after some floor debate.
There are a lot of citizens in the state of North Carolina that are between the ages of 66 and 72. And many of these people are recent retirees. They probably have more time and maybe even more desire to be able to participate.
And there's certainly plenty of folks who in their 60s are in nursing homes. There's certainly folks who in their 60s, sometimes for a temporary while, will have some form of a disability they are dealing with. When they encounter such a disability, all this does is, if they're called for jury service, allows them to make their request for excuse to the judge in writing rather than having to come to the courthouse.
The bill heads over to the Senate and would become law July 1st, 2011. A House Judiciary Committee has approved the creation of state terrorism charges. This bill covers suspects who plan terror activities as well as anyone who helps them plan an attack. The proposal defines terrorism like this: it's an act of violence meant to intimidate civilians or influence governmental conduct.
Currently, North Carolina is one of a few states in the Southeast that does not have in their statute a terrorism that addresses crime. The states of Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana do.
Property linked to terror activities would be seized by the state. Over in the Senate, it has passed legislation increasing penalties for second-degree murder convictions. The proposed change elevates second-degree murder to a higher class of felony. It's called a B1 felony. B1 felonies are some of the most serious crimes for which a convict cannot receive a death sentence. Second-degree murder convictions would carry life sentences under this particular bill. The Senate also unanimously approves the masking of voices on publicly released 911 calls. The House is next to consider this idea where law enforcement could either electronically modify the caller's voice on the tape or release a written transcript to the public.
Sometimes when people call into 911, if it's heard on a TV station, radio station, the like, those persons that might have made that call have been intimidated, and in the end, it's difficult to prosecute particular cases.
This bill is supported by both Democrats and Republicans. If it's made law, it would take effect immediately. The House passed legislation to protect the unborn children of pregnant women who are attacked by an assailant. In some cases, a person could face murder charges, not for killing the mother, but for killing her fetus. Thursday's debate took much of the afternoon. The Violence Against the Unborn Act, or Ethan's Law, allows for murder charges when an attack on a pregnant woman kills her unborn child. Ethan's Law supporters say 35 U.S. states have laws fully or partially protecting the unborn against violent acts.
This bill attempts to address a problem that's very serious in North Carolina. It's been addressed by other states, and it's time that we get on board with it.
No lawmaker expressed opposition to punishing an attacker whose attack on a pregnant woman kills her unborn baby. But some are questioning why an assailant would face separate charges if there's no way to know a woman is pregnant. They say existing state law already ups the charges on attacking pregnant women and harming the unborn child.
If their goal is to have life recognized at, from conception, regardless of the consequences, then they surely are accomplishing this in this bill. I feel like the unintended consequences in terms of criminal penalties for these acts of battery, to me, is going too far.
Ethan's Law supporters are calling this a non-argument. They say their law would give district attorneys discretion in seeking separate murder charges in an unborn child's death. They point to the bill, saying an attacker must willfully attack a woman because she's pregnant, and the target is the fetus's life, not the mother's.
This legislation matches North Carolina law to federal law when it involves the death of an unborn victim.
Ethan's Law would authorize lesser criminal charges like battery and manslaughter for harming a fetus if an attacker did not know a woman is pregnant. Medical procedures are completely exempt from any criminal liability. As bill sponsors say, this is an anti-crime bill and not an anti-abortion bill. The Senate will consider Ethan's Law next. The Senate approves mandatory blood testing for anyone involved in a death by vehicle accident. Law enforcement officers would request a blood sample, then get a warrant should the driver refuse. The blood test would investigate more than the presence of alcohol.
There are so many impairing substances out there that anytime there is an accident where a person's killed, we simply should require a blood test where there's not evidence that the person is drunk with alcohol.
This bill sits in the House. It would take effect December 1st, 2011. Senate legislation could offer mountain area public school systems a break on making up lost school days this year because of the bad weather. Mountain school districts can conclude this school year with less than 180 days served if students receive 1,000 hours of instructional time over 9 calendar months. Teachers, you'd be paid as if the school was open 180 days. The bill covers only the 2010-2011 school year. The Senate endorses the creation of forgivable college loans for certain students by merging 12 such programs in state government. Legislation would allow students to work off their college debt if they work for 4 years in a career field suffering severe personnel shortages. Education and nursing students are prime beneficiaries.
To attract people into those high need areas such as nursing and such as education. Over the years, the General Assembly has created 12 different programs. The recommendation was not to increase, decrease, change all those, but to put them into one program rather than 12 different programs.
Students who seek loan forgiveness but don't meet that after-college work requirement would simply pay off their college loans in the traditional sense. The House and Senate approve a repeal of the land transfer tax option. This is a tax on real estate deals that counties could seek through local election. 21 counties placed that transfer tax on the ballot, and voters rejected the idea every single time. The bill will prevent counties from seeking this tax in the future. Counties could seek an optional sales tax that was included as an option when the land transfer tax option was made law a few years ago. Some House Republicans propose capping state gasoline taxes. It's House Bill 399. It would establish a maximum 15 cents per gallon cap that would take effect July 1st and apply to future adjustments to the state's gas tax. White County Senator Josh Stein wants a cigarette tax loophole closed. He is proposing that these cigars that look like cigarettes be taxed at cigarette tax rates. Cigars and cigarettes are taxed differently right now. The Stein bill would apply to cigars that feature integrated filters and weigh 4.5 pounds per 1,000 cigars. Some House Republicans want a state database created so you can track state government spending. This proposed web-based database would launch by 2013. It would carry budget information from the 2011-2012 budget year and beyond. All the data would be available for at least 10 years. The bill would require that this database carry an easy-to-remember website address. The House continued its discussion of a bill Republican sponsors call Restore Confidence in Government. Opponents have labeled the bill voter ID. Voter ID is only one of several components of this legislation. The House Election Laws Committee began explaining those other options or provisions this week without voting on the legislation. The committee is expected to resume work on the bill next week. Gary Robertson with the Associated Press joins us to talk about all the other aspects of the voter ID bill. Gary, first of all, are any other provisions getting any sort of traction as compared to the voter ID provision?
Well, it's certainly the voter ID one is obviously the highest profile one, but there's some others that are particularly interesting, and I think probably could, if they were separated, probably could get a lot of bipartisan support at this point, particularly the one, there's particularly some about vendor contracts and campaign donations. There's also some others about campaign finance fines and whether or not they should be paid by the candidate.
Yeah, that's section 2 of this bill. Got a cheat sheet here. It says it hold candidates personally liable for campaign finance violations. Is that as straightforward as it appears?
Well, I think it's a direct, first of all, I think it's a direct response to what happened with former Governor Mike Easley, where he was fined, I believe, $100,000 by the State Board of Elections in late 2009. And the campaign basically ran out of money, mostly from paying attorney's fees. And that it appears that most of that fine will never get paid. So there's a feeling that if people were directly responsible for these fines out of their own pockets, and maybe people would think twice before potentially violating the law.
Is this bill, could you classify it as distinctly partisan at this point? Will it go down as a party line vote in your expectation from what you're seeing and what you're hearing?
Well, I don't want to prognosticate, but when you hear the Democrats being very passionate about about saying we don't need photo identification, there's no widespread fraud, and of course the many people in the black community who still feel like that this may be a remnant or make them feel like it may have a chilling effect on their ability to vote. I think it appears that it's moving down a path that may be partisan.
Those of us down here following this bill, every week seems to be the week where the House is going to vote on this, or at least that House Election Laws Committee. What's the timetable?
I don't really know, but you and I were both in a committee this past week, and it seemed to be very slow. I think there's a sense of being methodical here, because Speaker Tillis says he wants to get this right. He wants to bring on as many people as he can, but again, it's going to be, I think in many ways it's going to be a hard sell to some people, and so it may take a while to bring this out of committee.
Gary Robertson, appreciate it.
Thank you.
The House votes to relax all-terrain vehicle helmet laws for drivers riding on their private property. Current law requires ATV users to wear helmets and eye protection whether they're riding on public or private land. The bill sponsors say the private property requirements were the first time the state had applied its safety laws on private land, an overreach they want scaled back. But opponents say if the public could pay the medical bills of ATV accidents that happen on private property, then safety laws should apply there.
If someone were seriously injured and that someone did not have health insurance, who would pick up the tab for the medical costs?
That's the argument that a lot of people make for a lot of things, the cost of society to regulate public behavior. And if you follow that rationale to its logical conclusion, we should tell people how many Big Macs they're lawfully allowed to eat because they may have a heart attack. And I think that comes down to a philosophical question as to what role does government have to tell people something that they should do to protect themselves.
The bill heads to the Senate. The House is discussing a ban on driving while holding a cell phone to your ear. Actually, the bill would allow drivers to use a hands-free device with speakerphone. What's actually banned is the physical holding of the phone while you drive. Cell phone using drivers would pull to a stop before talking or receive a $100 fine.
I know that many of you feel like we get in your car, you know, we're everywhere else, we're trying to tell you not to do this, not to do that, but some things just make sense.
School bus drivers would be banned from using cell phones while driving their buses. Senate-backed legislation to increase fines for speeding in school and work zones is slightly changed as it gets going over in the House. A previous bill would have drivers fined a flat $250 for speeding in these zones. The bill was changed to create a sliding fine scale of at least $100 minimum, but no more than $250.
Why are we doing this? We're doing this because motor vehicle crashes are the leading non-medical cause of child death, accounting for 1 out of every 3 such fatalities.
The proposed law would be effective when the 2011-2012 school year begins this August. A bipartisan House bill would define the fish red drum, spotted sea trout, and striped bass as coastal game fish. This designation would ban the commercial fishing and sale of these species. They could only be caught by hook and line. The legislation would set aside $1 million to compensate commercial fishermen who trade in red drum, spotted sea trout, or striped bass. Yadkin County Representative Darryl McCormick joins us to talk about this bill. What's the impact of this going to be on the commercial fishing industry if you get it passed?
The impact on commercial fisheries is rather minimal. Aggregate of the 3 fishes in question is less than 2% of their overall catch. It's not something that's good for them. I won't pretend that it is, which is why we have to address the bill. We need to spend some time and look at it, see what the impacts are going to be for the state. The resource used as a recreational fisherman. We are the recreational fishing capital of America, and we want people to know that. We want people to come here and enjoy our beaches and enjoy fishing with us. And it looks like the allocation of this resource might be best used for the state of North Carolina, all the citizens in the state, as a recreational fish.
Yeah, how much money in tourism dollars are we talking by requiring these fish to only be caught by hook and line?
You're dead on it, Kelly. Right now it's somewhere in the area of, and I've seen multiple numbers, $700 million for recreational dollars, $700,000 for commercial fisheries at 2% of their take.
Why can't you allow commercial fishing and promote tourism fishing of the drum, the trout, and the bass?
There was a couple of big videos on the internet with thousands and thousands of the striped bass. 2 weeks after that major spill that was an internet fiasco, we looked at it again. Last time I went fishing, there was 2 carloads of guys from Ohio and 2 carloads of guys from Pennsylvania. There are a lot of folks coming to North Carolina to fish on our coast, and they spend a lot of money when they're here.
You set aside $1 million to pay commercial fishermen for the potential lost income. How far does $1 million go in a case like this?
Well, it has potential to go a long way if there are 2 sets. I've seen a couple of sets of numbers. There's always everything you look at. Their gross receipts was less than $700,000. So
statewide.
Statewide. Oh, and that's aggregate on the 3 fishes. So yeah, go a long way. I mean, relative to their actual losses. And that's not to say they don't find other ways to be productive during these short periods of time, because it's just not very much. It's not a great percentage of their resource.
Representative McCormick, thanks for being on the show. Good to have you on.
Thank you, sir.
The Senate has passed a bill relaxing some evening hunting rules. Hunters, you would be allowed to re-enter the forest after hunting hours to retrieve and dispatch big game that were legally hunted before dusk. Hunters would use a small light and a leashed dog as a condition. They'd still have to respect trespassing laws when finding that wounded game animal. Some Senate Republicans want it required that hunters receive written permission from landowners before hunting on any private land. Legislation would require written renewal from landowners every year. Hunters, you would carry that with you and present it if wildlife officers demand it. Hunting on state rights-of-way would be banned outright in this bill.
I think we're all in favor of hunting for the most part. We're all from my area. We're in rural North Carolina, and we enjoy hunting of all types, and I think it's just common courtesy to the landowner.
Hunting club members would carry their club ID cards and that permission note. This proposed law would supersede any local hunting ordinances. A House bill is filed. It hasn't hit committee yet, but would require a roof over every pet dog's head. The bipartisan bill would make it a crime to not offer your dog an artificial shelter with a waterproof roof. The doghouse must offer reasonable protection against bad weather. Those metal and plastic barrel dog houses would no longer suffice. Negligent dog owners, you'd face misdemeanor charges on this. Democratic Senators Ellie Kinnaird and Bob Atwater present several energy efficiency measures this week. Their bill would require tiered electricity rates for all users, so the more electricity you use, the higher your rate. A loan fund would be established to help consumers invest in energy conservation projects, and a new pollution tax would be created and levied on every energy inefficient appliance sold in North Carolina. Disabled veterans could see their homestead exemption increase from $45,000 to $65,000. Homeowners claiming this disabled veterans home exclusion would not qualify for any other property tax breaks. The exclusion could be claimed by honorably discharged disabled veterans or their unmarried surviving spouse. The full House will consider legislation defining acceptable state identification for government business purposes. ID cards issued by the Mexican consulate's office would not be acceptable identification under this bill. The state nor any local government could accept these consulate-issued ID cards from customers. Acceptable IDs would be a state-issued driver's license, foreign-issued passports accepted by the U.S. State Department, or U.S. government-issued documents stating residency. We're an active team here at Legislative Week in Review. When it comes to the internet, we hope you'll find us on Facebook, facebook.com/LEGWEEK. We have an email address. We'd love to hear from you, legweek@unctv.org, and watch this show online at unctv.org. Put a /LEGWEEK, click on the video player, and the show will stream on your computer. That's our show for this week. We'll hope we'll see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.